I spoke to the Israeli ambassador, Amir Maimon, to mark the 2-year anniversary of October 7, late last week because of today's holy day, but we had reflections, of course, on this 2 years since that atrocity on the 7th of October. We are speaking on the second anniversary of October 7. Can you reflect on this 2-year anniversary, what's happened on that day, what happened since, and the fact that there are still several hostages, many hostages, that remain in captivity?
Well, it's still very sad and difficult for me to talk about it. It's sad because I lost, like many other Israelis, family members, friends, students, and children of some of my friends. It is very sad because we are still, as you mentioned, having 48 of our men and women held by the Hamas, the terror organization. It is sad because I visited the places. And, while people are talking about numbers, and quite often you hear people referring to the number 1,200 Israelis that were massacred, that was butchered, murdered, and burned. And right afterwards, they do also mention that this is the highest number of murdered Jews since the Holocaust. But behind every number, there is a name, there is a story. It's a whole world. When I visited the kibbutz Nir Oz in July 2023, a few months after the massacre, I visited the houses of Aviv, and also the house of Shiri and Ariel and Kfir Bibas. And it's one thing to see their posters all over the world, and it's a totally different thing to visit their home, the home from which they were taken, to see the burned rooms, to see the blood stains. This is so sad, and I don't believe that I will ever be able to overcome the scenes and the tragedy that took place on October the 7th.
I know you were there in Israel when the atrocity, that terrorist attack took place. And obviously for so many Israelis, it remains a very present reality that those hostages remain in Gaza. One of the freed hostages, Eli Sharabi, was here recently. He had a message of hope, which I think would surprise many people, given the experience that he suffered.
Well, yeah, Eli Sharabi was held by the Hamas for 491 days. And in the beginning, most of the time, he was held in a dark tunnel. He was chained, he was starved, and he was tortured. Only hours after he was released, he learned that his beloved wife and 2 of his daughters were murdered by the Hamas. Not only that, he also learned about the murdering of his brother, Joseph, whose body is still held by the Hamas. Eli is an exceptional individual who I believe represents the essence of who we are as a society. He, conveyed here a very clear message that he chose life. We, the Israelis, we choose life. We are not war lovers. We want to live peacefully, in security, in our own country. We want to live.
Does it frustrate you then when you see the claims that are being made against Israel, like in the International Court of Justice and elsewhere, claims of genocide and so on, when you've still got dozens of hostages being held? Do you think there's a double standard being dished out here towards Israel if another country were to have an atrocity like October 7 perpetrated upon them? There would be retribution.
I cannot agree with you more, Kieran. And I always ask people who criticize Israel actions, what do you think would have been the international community reaction if it wouldn't have been Israel? If it would have been Sweden, Denmark, Greece, Italy, or Portugal that were experiencing the same challenges as we are experiencing? Do you really think that all these countries would have been put under the same pressure as Israel? Believe you me, usually the answer is no. Yes, there is here a double standard. The root cause is not the conflict. The root cause is antisemitism.
Has the recognition of Palestine by Great Britain, Canada, Australia, has that made the anti-Semitism worse, do you think?
Well, it didn't help. He didn't help, and he didn't help the American administration and the other parties that are involved in the ongoing efforts to bring about an end to the war in Gaza, to bring the Hamas to accept the terms as they were tabled just a few days ago by President Trump. If the Hamas will understand that they can get more outside the negotiating table than inside the negotiating table, so why should at all they resume negotiation? And I believe that talking about the recognition, it's important to also understand that it will not change anything on the ground. Declaration will not create a Palestinian state. A declaration will not bring about the release of our hostages. Exactly like election, or the election is not all about. It's not just about. It's not democracy. In order to live in democracy, you need to build democratic institutions. You need to change the curriculum. You need to educate people to live in peace with their neighbors.
The government, but the Australian government believes, and the aim clearly was to try and increase pressure on Israel not to give up on a two-state solution. The view was that parts of the Israeli government don't want to see a Palestinian state, and they had to increase momentum internationally to say to the Netanyahu government, don't give up on a two-state solution. Is that a fair argument they're making?
Well, I don't see how by unilaterally recognizing a Palestinian state, how it will bring the Israeli government to adhere to the past agreements and to participate in negotiation that will lead to a peaceful outcome. In the end of the day, and I think that in recent weeks it was stated not just by Israel but also by the American president and others, that the only way forward is if the two parties, the Israelis and the Palestinians, will find a way to negotiate the remaining major hurdles and major and outstanding issues, and it is for the two parties that are involved to determine how the future will be seen.
Can you see any circumstance under which Hamas will lay down their arms? Is a guarantee of the safety of Hamas leadership enough to get them to lay down their arms?
Well, I cannot speak for the Hamas. I can speak for the government of Israel, and we are determined to accomplish all our objectives that were set right after the brutal attack of October the 7th, and it is the dismantling of the Hamas military and political capabilities, and of course to bring about the release of our hostages. The elimination of the Hamas military capabilities is also part of the recent peace proposal that was tabled by the Trump administration.
And can I ask you, as a diplomat, you've been a diplomat for many, many years, have you experienced a diplomatic deep freeze? Have you been put in the diplomatic deep freeze by the Foreign Minister and Department of Foreign Affairs? Are they engaging with you, or are you being isolated?
Well, I'm not isolated, and we have very good exchange, communication with the senior government official
and the Foreign Minister.
And the Foreign Minister. We meet regularly, We speak over the phone, and not just after October the 7th, but even before. Our first meeting took place when she was in the opposition. And this is something that I really value and appreciate. At the same time, I can't say that the current status of our bilateral relationship is as it was, let's say, in the beginning of 2022.
In relation to the protests we've seen, the pro-Palestinian protests that have been regular across capital cities, there's one that they're trying to get to march on the Opera House, coinciding with October 7, or a few days afterwards. The police don't want that to happen. They've made that clear. I'm wondering, as someone who has been and served in democracies around the world, you look at this march. For many Jewish people, they don't see how they can go into the centre of cities around this country when these protests are happening. How do you get the balance between, say, a protest and freedom of speech, right to protest, versus the right for Australia's Jewish community to feel safe in their own city?
Well, I believe in a very simple principle. When you grant one party to exercise its inherent right to protest, to demonstrate, you should make sure that you're not denying other party rights to do, to exercise their inherent rights. And when you look around here in Australia, and I'm sure that you're familiar with this situation, there is, if I'm not mistaken, only one community that when its people are looking to exercise, as we just had yesterday, their inherent right to celebrate their holidays, to worship their gods. There is only one community that in order to enter their worship place, they need to go through security. There are CCTV around, there are security officers around, and there are bars on each window. This is not the way that I believe Australians of Jewish faith or any other faith should experience when they are looking to exercise their inherent right. It's exactly the same in the universities. The Australian students of Jewish faith are the only group of students, Australian students, I'm not talking about Israelis, I'm talking about Australian students, your students. When they are in the campuses, they have a special building, known in many universities as the so-called dedicated building. In other words, safe building, where they can live in a more secure atmosphere. Kieran, this is insane. This is insane. We're talking about Australia. We're talking about your own students. It's not my student. It's not my challenge. It's your challenge.
I want to ask you about the challenge of say, refugees out of Gaza, those that have been under Hamas rule for many years now. Are you worried about the social cohesion issue of bringing hundreds, thousands of refugees from Gaza that might have been indoctrinated, anti-Jew hatred by Hamas, and then the social cohesion question of then assimilating that group into Australia? Is that a concern to you?
Well, it is first and foremost Australia's concern. And as I said before, when it comes to social cohesion-related issues, I reject the suggestions that what you are experiencing here is related to the war in Gaza. It is first and foremost related to the set of values that you expect Australians to follow once they chose Australia as their homeland. It's one thing to preserve your cultural roots, to enjoy the wonderful cuisine of different ethnic groups, but it is very important to follow the same set of values.
Finally, on the peace prospect, you touched on it before, and the peace deal announced by Donald Trump. I just wonder, is there any prospect of peace? As someone who's, you've worked in the diplomatic corps, you served in the military like all of your counterparts over a number of years. Do you see any scenario where there is peace? And I ask you that in the context as well of Prime Minister Netanyahu saying he will forcibly resist a Palestinian state. How do you have peace if you can't have a two-state solution?
Well, first and foremost, it's important to remind the viewers that we are all waiting, once again, I should say, for the Hamas response. Prime Minister Netanyahu, the government of Israel, accepted the proposal that was tabled by President Trump. So we are all waiting for the Hamas, a terror organization that is listed also and recognized also here in Australia, respond. Secondly, it's very important also to emphasize that our war against Hamas is not a war against the Palestinian people. It's very important to understand. The Hamas is the source of the suffering in our part of the world, for both the Israelis and the Palestinians. And this is something that not always is well understood. Another thing, I'm by nature very optimistic. And
you're a grandfather. Do you ever see a moment where your grandchildren will enjoy peace?
So if I can share with you a personal story, I was born to a family where the father was always in the battlefield. My late father, he fought in the War of Independence. He lost his brother and two of his first cousins in the War of Independence. And I never knew my father until I reached teenage. And when he came back home, it was my turn to join the army. And I was really hoping and wishing that my children, my boys, will not have to experience what he had experienced, what I have experienced. And unfortunately, two of my boys completed the military service in combat units. And now I have a 3-year-old Adar grandchild. And I can only in prayer that he will not have to experience. And when I'm praying for him and wishing for him, I'm also wishing for Palestinian children, that they will not have to experience the same thing.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Ambassador Amir Maimon, thank you for your time. I very much appreciate it. On a solemn day, really, as we mark.
A very sad day. It's not just personal grief, it's national grief. We are still, in a state of trauma. And you need to visit the place. You need to see what the people that were engaged in daily interaction with Gazans and with their Palestinian friends, people that believe in peaceful solution, and to visit all these areas and to understand. And one of the things that Eli Sharabi shared with Senator Wong and Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marx, that he still didn't visit his home in Kibbutz Be'eri. And he's not the only one. There are many that will not return to their homes, not because they were burned, not because they were demolished, the trauma.
As I say, I very much appreciate you making the time to speak to us. Thank you for your time, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.